Okay, hello everyone. Glad to be here, and my name is Peter, and I would like to quickly show you my little project called Indie Pitcher. It's a website and a REST API for sending emails, basically. Here is a quick example. One of the things you can do is that you can take a markdown and you can turn it into a, I believe, decent-looking email. You can add a custom logo of your brand. You can change the accent color, that kind of stuff. It also handles subscription management for you. So, when there's that button, unsubscribe, and users can choose what mailing list they want to be subscribed to. This is what the dashboard looks like. And there's a ServerSide.swift SDK for this. It works with Vapor. It works with Hummingbird. You can use it with AWS Lambda as well. Here's basically an example of how you would use the markdown I showed you. You add a contact, and then you send an email that gets personalized based on data that you assign to that contact. And the last line there, you select which email list you want to send it to. If the user is not subscribed to that list, that it's not going to be sent to them. And you can select that you want to wait 5 minutes and basically send. So when a user signs up, you may want to choose that you want to send an onboarding email after 5 minutes. It's currently in public beta. I was kind of hustling to publish something before this conference. There's a free tier, so you can try it out if you want to. The domain is indiepitcher.com. And now, why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you all of this because the backend is a monolith written using Swift. It's written using Vapor 4. It's Dockerized. I deployed to DigitalOcean using that app platform. Please don't use those droplets. That's too much of a hassle. You can just use the app platform. Pretty much all user data is stored in Postgre using Fluent, which again is a part of Vapor. It quite heavily uses queues, which is to offload work and schedule repeating tasks. I'll talk about that later. And it actually ended up using AWS quite extensively. That's the engine that basically runs sending emails. I'll talk about it later. I decided to outsource user authentication using Firebase. And there's going to be Stripe purchases currently. It's not there, but I will hopefully ship it. So right now there's only the free tier. Quick agenda. And let's get to it. So first of all, let's talk about Vapor and Fluent in general. I think it works really great. For me, it's been a pleasant experience. One thing I can say about Vapor is that I believe that the way Vapor is designed is that it makes simple things easy and advanced things possible, which is kind of how it should be. A lot of iOS developers, when they decide to start kind of playing with server-side, they kind of naturally go to ServerSide.swift and they choose Vapor because it's probably the most prominent framework at this point, even though there's Hummingbird. Hummingbird 2 was just released. And they have kind of this narrow vision. That certainly used to be my case as well, but over the past few years, I've gained quite some experience with things like Ruby, Rails, and Go. And even with that, I still really enjoy using Vapor. It's kind of my weapon of choice. Then Fluent. Fluent is great. I like using it, but it has a few gotchas. It's pretty much I would say all or almost all of crashes that I've experienced were in Fluent because it has these fatal errors, especially around eager loading when you have like two tables and you want to load something from a different table. You need to make sure you've preloaded the results, otherwise it crashes. I understand why that is, because back when this was designed, there were no throwing errors or racing errors, so this was the design decision. But it works great. It works great as long as once you get familiar with how things work. Then queues. Queues is also a part of Vapor. It's a framework that can help you with two things. One is to offload heavy work from your request bodies. So you basically take something you need, like sending an email, and you basically kick it down the road to be done later and asynchronously. One cool feature is that it supports retry. One example would be if you want your backend to support webhooks. I mean, calling webhooks, calling endpoints that consume webhooks. It's a good practice that webhooks should support retry when it fails, so you can actually easily do this using queues. And it's also used to schedule periodic tasks, also known as cron jobs. I use that quite heavily. Please read the docs about queues on Vapor website. They're actually really well written. Here is a quick example how those queues, you create a struct called, let's say, cleanup job that runs, and then you schedule it to run every minute. That's it. You need to have some data that kind of, or like some storage that kind of stores the state of jobs that are scheduled. Vapor officially offers a Redis driver that I'm using. I'm again using hosted Redis on DigitalOcean. That works. But if you're just playing with this, you can use an in-memory driver that gets you pretty far. Obviously, when the app gets restarted, you kind of lose state for things like if you want it to be handling, the retry of calling webhooks. But when you're just playing with this and developing things, you can just use in-memory driver. That works perfectly fine. And there's also an implementation that uses Fluent that you can try. I haven't really used it, but it is there. Now, AWS. So Indie Pitcher basically uses 3 AWS services. One is SES, Simple Email Service, that's used to send emails. Then it uses SQS, a Simple Queue Service, which is basically this queue that you're pulling, and what I use it for is to consume notifications when an email bounces, when an email was delivered, when an email was opened, when a link was tapped. That's all coming through SQS. And then S3, which is an CDN object storage, I use it to upload email logos, images, that kind of stuff. I use this project called Sodo, which is a community project, and it's great. I really love it. It's really user-friendly. Here is an example how to easily upload a file, an image, but like any file to S3. Yep, it's this simple. I can tell you that, by the time you're done dealing with the AWS console, you've suffered enough, and then this is then like really, really easy. This is an example how to use that SQS queue I was talking about. This, you can imagine, this is inside of that queue's async schedule job that runs every second, for instance. And you just use it to pull for messages that are in the queue. And also there's actually, so that Sodo is a community project, but there's now an official Swift, ServerSide.swift SDK coming straight from Amazon that I believe is based now like marked as stable since last week, I believe. I haven't really tried it out personally, but it is there. Okay, now next thing, user analytics. I basically only use server logging, so all the app events come from Vapor backend. I use Mixpanel. For that, I actually wrote a simple SDK. I will have links here and there, but last slide of my presentation is where I've summarized all those links, so you can take a screenshot later then, or a photo if you want to. And if there's something really interesting, like worth celebrating or worth being aware of, I actually have this Telegram bot. I just use their REST API. I don't use any SDK or anything like that. So, indie hackers use Telegram. They don't use Slack, so I use Telegram. This is an example of the Mixpanel SDK I put together. Really simple. You can, when you have a new user, you can identify that user by setting profile ID and whatever info you want to share about that user in Mixpanel, like their name. Then you can log an event, and when a user deletes their account, you delete them from Mixpanel as well to be a good citizen. This is then what it looks like in Mixpanel. This is a screenshot I took from Vapor's documentation, but then you have a list of users. What's interesting, what you can see, those two last columns is country and region or city. And if I go back, you can see that you can pass a Vapor request, and which is optional, but if you do so, it parses few things from it, such as the IP address. And Mixpanel then geocodes it into a country and a city, and then you can see it there. Now, error reporting. I use Sentry. I forked this repo created by someone else and kind of revived it to work with Vapor 4 and that kind of stuff. But this actually works. It's not tied to Vapor. It works with anything. The way it works is that Vapor, and I can imagine most frameworks, use the logging framework from Apple, and by default, the logging, you can basically add custom outputs. The default one is to standard output, but you can add custom outputs to whatever you want. So this basically adds a custom output to Sentry that uses Sentry REST API to log errors there. And I use a better stack to forward logs there because they have quite nice interface to go through logs if you need to. Here's an example of an error in Sentry. You can see somewhere in the middle of the screen that there's an error that happened in pool SQS job.swift on line 196. So that's pretty cool. Here is another example that's unfortunately not that cool, which shows, okay, an error happened, but it happened in, what is it, error middleware, you know. So basically the issue is that as far as I'm concerned, there is currently no easy way to get a stack trace, like in process. When an app crashes, you get a stack trace, and that's good, but if you catch an error somewhere, you want to upload it to Sentry and you want to attach a stack trace, there's really right now no reasonable way to do that, unfortunately. So yeah, right now, so yeah, this, as far as I know, is currently a limitation of Swift, and you can only basically get the last line and of where things happened. When it comes to crashes, the SDK actually should somehow support crashes, but I haven't really been using that. What I'm using is, so this is a better stack, and what we're looking at here is when the process crashes, it dumps the stack trace that has certain formats. So I basically use regex to look for it, and when I find something that matches, the regex matches a format of a crash, I send myself an email. So that's kind of. I wanted to show you an example, but fortunately the app isn't really crashing, and I was too lazy to make it crash manually. So no. Let's quickly touch on front end. So the front end is a combination of Leaf, which is a templating language, which is again a part of Vapor to kind of build mostly static HTML, and the rest is React. This is an example of the simple things are, there's few simple things and screens like the management of what lists is a user subscribed to. This is written using Leaf, and it's basically served using Vapor. It's using Tailwind and Daisy UI if anyone was interested. The issue with that is that, as far as I know, I asked, and they're probably currently, when you add Daisy UI using basically just a CDN link, you cannot really modify the look. So this is some default theme, The button should ideally be purple, not blue, to kind of match the rest of the branding. I need to figure out how to do that. So basically, Vapor and front end. Yeah, I really wouldn't go beyond static pages or simple things like I just showed you here, which is just a, basically one button that does the post request. Yeah, as far as I know, there's currently no like reasonable way to make decent dynamic web pages using Swift. There's two possible futures I can imagine. One is HTMX, which there's already packages that kind of use HTMX with Leaf or Mustache, or so you can take a look at that. And Go, the programming language Go is like a pioneer in adopting HTMX, so we can definitely drive some inspiration from there. Another source of inspiration can definitely be Elixir with their live views. And yeah, if you end up doing something with Leaf, I would recommend don't use Xcode, use VS Code for this. VS Code has a extension that gives you syntax highlighting for Leaf stacks. Yeah, but the dashboard is written in React. Again, this is what it looks like. A few things about it quickly. It's a client-side rendering thing. It doesn't use Next.js or anything like that. It's client only. It uses internal REST API that's written in Swift using Vapor, of course. And user authentication is done using JWT token, using the Firebase auth SDK, as I mentioned. It's deployed to Cloudflare, which is for free with unlimited bandwidth, as far as I know. So yeah, just a GitHub action when I push it. It basically makes it available on Cloudflare. And for the React stuff, if someone was interested or struggling with something similar, I discovered this framework called Refined Dev, which basically takes all of the most common things for like building forms and everything in React and puts them together and builds on top of that. So that's what I've been using. Unfortunately, if you don't have much previous React experience, the learning curve is pretty steep. But I just didn't know any. Yeah, this is what I would recommend. I unfortunately don't have anything much better to recommend you. And what I would recommend though is when you start messing with React, use Copilot and ChatGPT a lot, because there's like so many open source code that it's actually doing a pretty good job at doing what you want when you tell it to, I don't know, build a form or build a table or something like that. Authentication, yep, there's a package actually written by someone else. And when you fire up a request that includes a valid JW token for Firebase auth, you can easily decode it like this. You verify it, and then you can pull user's email or name, or even their picture, their avatar URL. If they're signed in using something like Google Sign-in, you can get their profile picture. Yeah, Firebase auth, I can recommend it. Seems to work fine. You can, yeah, again, I'm using JWT, but if you were using, let's say, Leaf and HTMX, you would probably want to do authentication using cookies. Firebase auth supports that as well. I was kind of exploring it, but then I decided to not to go down that path. I believe it gives you 50,000 monthly users for free, but someone was actually telling me the other day that it's completely for free unless you start using some of the advanced features such as 2FA and stuff like that. And there's many similar providers, like, I don't know, Clerk, Auth0, that there's like dozens of them. And testing. So I don't write that many tests. I mean, I do have some, and I will show you. But I guess what I wanted to say is that one cool thing about Swift and Vapor is that the compiler actually catches so many things that it actually usually makes me quite comfortable just, YOLOing something to production and it's mostly correct. But, just a caveat, I do have 10 years of experience with Swift, and I do understand threading and concurrency on the level, of C, C++, because when I was a teenager, I would be writing a game engine in C++ because I didn't know any better back then. But I kind of know how this stuff works. That's someone coming from I don't know, Node or Ruby might be accidentally causing a lot of race conditions. But obviously that's all now getting better with 6 and stuff. And again, I would say almost exclusively every time I managed to bring the process down, it was something with Fluent, and those property wrappers. And I've kind of, burned myself enough time at this point that I'm not really doing that anymore. I'm nowhere to be aware of. And testing. So I have some unit tests and integration tests, or flow tests, as some people call it, which basically my understanding is that this is testing of hitting endpoints. For unit tests, I usually use regular XC test. This is an example of a rate limiter that I have for public API. Nothing too fancy there. Maybe the only thing is that there's that line, try await task.sleep for 1 second. This basically freezes the test for 1 second, which is not ideal. There probably are ways these days to mock the clock. There's this protocol called clock, and I believe those 0.3 guys have some package to have all these mock logs. So maybe I didn't get to it due to time constraints, but there hopefully is a way to kind of make this, to avoid having this wait for 1 second and just speed up the clock somehow. And instead of that XCT equivalent kind of stuff, I use Nimble, which is that expect line. And for integration flow tests, which might be a bit more interesting. So my biggest issue with XC test and even the new framework, I haven't really seen Apple address this. If you know something, please do let me know. But when you're doing these flow and integration tests, you're kind of you're in certain state and then you dive deeper, and then you want to test something, like in case of IndiePitcher, let's say you create a user, you create an organization, you create a project, then you add a user, you add a mailing list, you subscribe the user to the mailing list, which is state, and then you want to kind of go from this state and you want to send an email, unsubscribe the user, try to send an email again, which is why I hope this is big enough. I use this thing called Quick, which is basically, it allows you to nest tests. This is very similar to XC, what is it called? XC spec, I believe, where you have some initial setup and tear down. This is some initial setup common for all the tests. Then after all, that's a tear down that happens after every test case where you shut down the app. And this is the meat where you basically, let me zoom in on my, basically what this does is that you create a campaign. When you create a campaign, you check that it's enabled. That's one state you're in. And then you kind of want to keep going from that state. When you disable a campaign, you want to check that it's disabled. This can also turn into a huge pile of mess, but at least it kind of provides a way to nest tests. This is heavily inspired by the world of Ruby. I believe it's called RSpec, the framework. So you can take a look at that. Then performance. Honestly, I don't know. I just shipped it and went for holidays for a week. The users right now are mostly friends and family. I mean, so far it works. But from what I've seen with ServerSide.swift and Vapor in particular, which is the framework I've experienced with, I would say it's fast enough. It works. I haven't really seen any issues and it has a potential to be really fast. But as of now, I think it's fine. I'm happy with it. So a summary. I hope I've managed to convince some of you that yes, I do believe that you can actually use ServerSide.swift to build a backend for a actual product that you expect people to use, not just some test project. Yeah, probably the most annoying part is that if you want to build something like software as a service kind of thing, you probably need a website or some sort of website for your dashboard. And yeah, for that, yeah, as of now, after looking into many options, yeah, what I would recommend is use React or something similar like Vue.js if that's what you're into. But trying to use Leaf 2 to make like super dynamic web pages is probably not the way to go as of now. And yes, please, those stack traces, that'd be really helpful. So yes, thank you. I'm happy to take questions. And here is the promised slide with all the links I had in my presentation.